The lights inside the penthouse pulsed with a rhythm too perfect to be spontaneous. A grand Manhattan rooftop party, attended by hedge fund heirs, supermodels, and the kind of billionaires who never carried wallets, was winding down. But in a quiet corner of the balcony, surrounded by gold-trimmed glasses and cigarette smoke, a private game was still going. Alexander Grayson sat in a leather lounge chair, shirt sleeves rolled up, wristwatch glinting under the city glow. In his hand was a glass of scotch he had barely touched. His eyes were cool, detached, scanning the glittering skyline like a man who had conquered it already. Across from him, Blake Callahan smirked, tapping his cigar against the ashtray. They had played this game before, many times. Bet a woman, bet a number, bet a secret. It was never about the prize, it was always about control. But tonight was different. Blake leaned forward and turned his phone toward Alexander. The screen showed a security feed from the lower levels of the building, grainy and gray, but sharp enough. A girl was loading trays in the staff kitchen. Her dress was plain. Her movements were quiet, but precise. Her long hair was tied in a thick braid down her back. Bet you can't even get her to talk to you. Blake's voice was amused, condescending. She is not just quiet. She is untouched. Alexander barely looked. And? Blake's grin widened. She is from some farm town in Texas, lives in a rented room with 4 other girls. No social media, no boyfriend, no parties, no history. She is not just innocent, she is untested, untouched. Her name is Ellie Mae, and rumor is, she has never even kissed a man. Alexander raised an eyebrow. So? Blake shrugged. I dare you. Get her to dinner. One night, that is all. Alexander sipped his drink, considering. This was beneath him. Silly. Childish. But something in her stillness on the screen, something in the way she moved without seeking attention, made him pause. What is the catch? He asked. Blake leaned back. The catch is, she is the only woman in this building who would not sell her soul to stand next to you. Alexander smiled slowly, challenge accepted. He did not know her, but he had undone dozens like her before. This one would be no different. Or so he thought. He walked back into the party and down the service stairs, loosening his collar, rehearsing something casual to say. When he found her behind the catering station, arranging spoons with delicate care, he cleared his throat. She looked up, startled but not nervous. Her eyes were not wide with recognition. She did not blush. She did not stammer. She simply said, "Can I help you, sir?" And just like that, the game changed. He tried charm. She answered with calm. He tried power. She countered with stillness. She did not flirt. She did not retreat. She just stood there, looking at him like a man, not a title. He left that room feeling strangely winded. He walked in thinking he would break her in one night. But one look from her, one pause between her words, and suddenly he could not remember how to breathe. Ellie Mae Carter had never seen a skyscraper before she boarded the bus to New York City. Her entire world until then had been flatland, stretching acres across central Texas, where sunrises came in quiet gold and the night smelled of hay and hard work. She was born into a family of 6 children, raised on a cattle farm where chores came before school and where kindness was expected but praise was rare. Her mother believed in scripture and strong coffee, her father in silence and sweat. There were no vacations, no mall trips, no prom nights. There was only what needed to be done and who needed to be fed. But Ellie was different. She did not complain about the work, but she often stayed up late, scribbling poems in the margins of her school books or sketching wildflowers in her church notes. She wanted more, not more money, not even freedom in the flashy way the TV shows described it. She wanted stillness, purpose, beauty in motion. So at 19, after saving money from selling hand-sewn aprons at a local farmer's market, she applied for a scholarship program that placed rural girls in internship programs across the country. She thought she would end up in a library or a museum. Instead, she was assigned to a luxury hospitality apprenticeship program inside one of Manhattan's most exclusive real estate properties. For 6 weeks, she would rotate through every department, cleaning, serving, managing. She said yes, without hesitation. The moment she stepped into the city, her senses were assaulted. The noise, the steel, the movement. She had never seen people rush without making eye contact. She had never been in a place where no one smiled back. But she adapted, slowly, quietly, and without complaint. She shared a bunk room with 3 other girls, all louder, more experienced, more cynical. They teased her for her plain clothes and soft accent. She did not mind. She listened, watched, and learned. By the 4th week, she had memorized the schedule of the entire building. She knew which guests tipped, which managers yelled, and which elevators stuck between floors. She kept her head down. She moved like she was part of the wall. But she noticed everything. She noticed the man with the midnight-colored suits who never smiled. She noticed how everyone moved out of his way like he was royalty. How even the air changed when he entered a room. She knew his name was Alexander Grayson, that he was 35, that he owned more properties than the mayor, and more cars than her whole town combined. But she did not care. Not in the way the other girls did. They whispered about him like he was a myth, some cruel prince made of stone and scandal. Ellie thought he looked tired, not weak, just heavy, like he carried something no one ever offered to help him set down. She never expected him to speak to her, so when he appeared beside her that night in the back prep kitchen, she was stunned, not afraid, not impressed, just confused. He asked her name. She told him. He asked if she liked working here. She said she was grateful. He said she did not talk like other girls. She replied that she was not trying to. He smirked, but it faltered. Most women tried to impress him. Ellie made him feel like he was the one being studied. The encounter lasted 5 minutes, but it followed him for days. He thought about her when he was on conference calls, when he was sitting through board meetings, when he walked into his penthouse and found it too quiet. He remembered her eyes, calm, unshaken, unreachable. She did not chase him. She did not linger near him hoping to be noticed. She returned to her tasks as if nothing had happened. And that was when he knew he was not in control of this game anymore. Blake teased him. Other men laughed. One even tried to approach her a few nights later. She turned him down with a single word. No. She said it like a door closing, like a girl who knew exactly what she did not want. Alexander watched all of it from a distance. Something in him itched, restless, curious. He started staying later at the office, started finding reasons to visit the lower levels. He made sure she was assigned to his floor. She never acted surprised, never gave him more than was asked. But her presence lingered. Her stillness pressed into him like a thumbprint. One night, he left her a note, just a folded card with a time and place. Rooftop, 11. She showed up exactly on time. No makeup, hair in a braid, a soft blue dress that belonged to a different decade. He asked her why she came. She said she was tired of avoiding what she already knew was happening. He asked what that was. She said, "Whatever this is." He smiled then. Not the practiced one, the real kind, the kind that cracked something open. That night he learned something terrifying. Ellie Mae Carter did not flirt. She did not scheme. She simply existed. And existing, in a world like his, was more powerful than anything he had ever tried to tame. Alexander Grayson had always understood power. It came in contracts and capital, in silence and expectation. He learned young that people either feared you or needed you, sometimes both. By the time he turned 30, he had already bought out 3 competitors and quietly dismantled 2 more. His reputation wasn't built on charm or theatrics. It was built on precision, ruthlessness, and yet none of it worked on Ellie. The untouched farm girl from nowhere didn't flinch when he stood too close. She didn't blush when he looked too long. Her stillness was not shyness. It was strength. He hadn't planned to pursue her. The original dare had been a joke, a whispered provocation during a late-night poker game on his penthouse balcony. "Bet you can't even get her to look at you twice," Blake had said, smirking, nodding toward a building camera feed. "She's not just untouched, she's Amish or something." "She's not Amish," Alexander had said, barely glancing up. "She's just not interested." Blake had laughed. "Exactly, that's the point. You've betted heiresses, CEOs, models. This one, you couldn't break her in one night if you tried." The rest of the table laughed. Alexander said nothing. But that night, he didn't sleep. The next day, he watched Ellie more closely. Not like a predator. Like a man suddenly aware that he wasn't immune to curiosity. She moved like the world wasn't watching, like she had nothing to prove. She spoke to people softly, only when necessary, but when she did, they listened. He started asking for her by name, requested she assist with inventory, asked for her presence at events. Slowly, the others noticed. The whispering started again, louder now. Some of the staff began treating her with forced politeness, others with veiled contempt. One manager even tried to reassign her, calling it a better fit. Alexander reversed the decision with a single phone call, but he never explained why. Ellie did not ask, until one evening, 3 weeks into the slow unraveling of his control, she finally said what neither of them had dared speak aloud. "Why me?" They were in the back service elevator, the hum of the lift filling the space. She wasn't looking at him, just at her reflection in the mirrored wall. "You've got 1,000 women orbiting your world. Why me?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. "Because you're not orbiting anything. You're just standing still." She turned to him then. "That's not a reason." "It is to me." The doors opened, but neither moved. Something hung in the air between them. Tension, yes, but more than that. Recognition. They were both used to being unseen in different ways. He was seen only as what he owned. She was seen as what she lacked. But together, something shifted. That night, he didn't sleep again. The next morning, he had flowers delivered to her bunk room. She returned them. No note, just a quiet refusal. He smiled when he heard. She was a wildfire wrapped in linen, and she didn't even know it. The turning point came during a rooftop event for international investors. It was late spring. Ellie was assigned to work the logistics, coordinate between the catering team and the event planner. Alexander was scheduled to speak. He spotted her the moment he arrived, not because she was trying to be seen, because she never tried. And still, he couldn't stop seeing her. She wore a modest navy dress, flat shoes, and a lanyard badge. Compared to the diamonds and silk around her, she looked like a shadow. And yet, he found her first. Their eyes met across the rooftop. For a second, neither moved. Then, slowly, she turned back to her clipboard. He felt the burn of something in his chest. Maybe guilt, maybe desire, maybe something deeper. He made his speech, toasted the expansion, shook hands with ambassadors and executives, but the moment he was free, he went to her. "You're good at this," he said. "I've had practice," she replied without looking up. "Is that your way of accepting a compliment? Is that your way of giving one?" He smiled. "Touché." There was a pause. She sighed, setting down her clipboard. "Look, I know about the dare." He blinked. "What?" "I'm not stupid, Mr. Grayson. I heard things, and I know what men like you do when they're bored." Her voice didn't shake. "But I'm not a game, and I won't be a mistake." He stared at her. For the first time, he didn't have a defense. He didn't deny it, didn't excuse it. "You're right," he said. "It started that way, but it isn't that now." "Isn't it?" she asked, meeting his gaze. "Then prove it." The challenge wasn't in her tone, it was in her stillness. She wasn't daring him, she was offering him one last chance. Do better, be better. That night, he called Blake. "Game's off," he said. "I lost the moment she looked at me like I was just another suit." Blake laughed. "So you didn't get her?" "No," Alexander said, "but I think she got me." The following days blurred into something strange. He didn't pursue her, not obviously. He started showing up where she was scheduled, noticing when she looked tired. Once, he slipped a protein bar into her apron pocket during a 12-hour shift. Another time, he had a pair of work shoes sent to her room after noticing the blisters on her heel. She said nothing, but she wore the shoes. When his mother visited the city, he asked Ellie to prepare the guest suite. His mother later asked, "Who's the girl with the eyes like autumn storms?" "Someone I can't stop thinking about," he replied. One night during a late cleanup shift, the lights flickered. A storm was rolling in. Power dipped. Elevators stalled. The building was still. Ellie stood alone in the service hallway, holding a mop. Alexander approached from the other end, flashlight in hand. "Scared of storms?" he asked. "Only of what comes after," she said. He didn't touch her, just stood near. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." She looked at him. Then slowly she said, "Sometimes I pretend I'm not afraid of wanting more." He exhaled. "Me too." Then came the night, the one he hadn't planned, the one she hadn't prepared for. They ended up in the penthouse by accident. Or maybe it was something else. She was asked to deliver a package. He was reviewing late-night reports. She knocked. He opened the door. Neither spoke for a moment. Then, without invitation, she stepped inside. He watched her move through the space, barefoot, hair down, soft cotton dress brushing her knees. She looked nothing like the women who had stood in this room before, and that was exactly why he couldn't look away. She turned slowly. "You said you wanted something real," she whispered. "Then stop waiting for permission." He didn't move at first, but when he did, it was slow, reverent, as if afraid to shatter something sacred. She reached for his hand. Their fingers touched, and just like that, the game ended. Not with a conquest, but with surrender of a different kind, one that didn't look like losing, one that felt like finally choosing something that mattered. She'd never touched a man before, not like this, not willingly, not with intention. And yet, when her fingers curled gently around Alexander's, there was no trembling, only quiet understanding. The kind that lived between two people who were more afraid of silence than of sound. He had kissed 100 women, maybe more, but never slowly, never like now. With Ellie, it wasn't about want, it was about wonder. Her eyes didn't close the way others did. They stayed open, wide, steady, as if she needed to see every moment to believe it was real. He didn't pull her into his arms. He waited, and when she stepped closer on her own, when her chest brushed his, when her breath warmed the hollow of his throat, he felt something deep in his ribs loosen. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. She shook her head. "No, tell me the truth." He paused, then whispered, "I didn't want to win the dare. I just wanted to be near you long enough to forget why I ever agreed to it." Her lips parted. "And now? Now I'd rather lose you than lie to you." Her breath caught. "Then don't lie. But don't leave either." He cupped her face. "I won't." The first kiss wasn't fire. It was breath. A soft exhale shared between two people who had forgotten how to be gentle with themselves. His hand didn't roam. It rested at the small of her back. Her fingers didn't grab. They lingered at the edge of his shirt collar, learning his shape like a language. Later, as they sat on the edge of his bed, the city lights behind them flickering like a heartbeat, Ellie whispered, "I'm not what you're used to." "Good," he said. "I'm tired of what I'm used to." She smiled faintly. "And I'm not fragile, just careful." "You should be," he replied. "The world isn't kind to women who trust too easily." "That's why I watch," she said. "I see what people hide." "What do you see when you look at me?" "A boy who forgot how to be held." That broke something in him, not loudly, quietly, like a window finally opened after years of dust and heat. She asked him nothing that night, not about his past, not about his scars, but when her hand brushed one along his ribs and he tensed, she didn't pull away. She pressed her palm against it gently, like it deserved to be acknowledged. "It's from before," he said, "when I still believed pain made me invincible." "You don't believe that now?" "No," he murmured. "Now I think pain makes us honest." They didn't sleep together in the way people assumed. Their bodies met, yes, but there was no frenzy, no desperate clawing, just a long unfolding of skin and soul. She guided his hand to her hip, to the place she had always hidden beneath oversized jeans and farm dresses. He kissed it softly. She guided his mouth to her collarbone. He lingered. When he slid her dress off her shoulders, he did it like an apology. And when he finally saw her fully, he didn't smile. He looked reverent, like she was sunlight for the first time in winter. She didn't hide, didn't flinch, not when he ran his fingers along her spine, not when he whispered that she was beautiful. She had always hated that word, too vague, too often used as currency, but when he said it, it felt earned, meant. Her voice was quiet. "I don't know what happens after this." "Then don't think about after," he said. "Just think about now." They stayed like that until the sun crept between the buildings and painted gold across the bed. He didn't ask her to stay, but she did, curled beside him, heartbeat slow, lips swollen from kisses that meant something. And in the hush of that room, they made a promise, neither spoke aloud, that the dare was over, that what had started as ego had become something terrifyingly real. The next morning, he made coffee. She folded the blanket. They didn't rush, didn't pretend they had answers. But when she stood in the doorway, hair loose, shirt buttoned wrong, he stepped behind her and said, "You changed everything." "I didn't mean to." "Exactly," he said. "That's why it matters." Over the next few days, something shifted between them. Not publicly. They kept their distance at work. She still clocked in, still cleaned the utility room, still greeted people with quiet dignity. He still sat in meetings, still led calls with Tokyo and Berlin. But at night, when the lights dimmed and the rest of the world quieted, she'd find herself walking to the penthouse, and he would be waiting, not always with touch, sometimes just with tea, or silence, or a book left open to a poem she might like. One night she brought a journal, let him read a few pages. He didn't laugh, didn't judge. He read slowly, carefully, and when he finished, he said, "You've felt too much for one lifetime." "Then maybe I'm ready to feel something good." He kissed her fingertips in response. The turning point came when his father visited, a man cut from marble and expectation, tall, silver-haired, eyes like razors. He watched Ellie walk by the office once, then asked Alexander, "She's not your usual type." "She's not a type at all," Alexander said. "She's real." His father said nothing, but later Ellie found herself reassigned to a different floor. She didn't ask why. She just packed her things and left quietly. That night, she didn't show up. Alexander waited, and when she didn't come, he called her. No answer. He went to her building, waited outside. When she finally appeared, her face was unreadable. "You let him move me," she said. "I didn't know," he said. "But I should have seen it coming." You said I changed everything, she replied, but nothing's different. I'm still disposable. You're not. Then why didn't you stop him? Because I've spent my whole life letting him control my moves, but not anymore. Talk is easy, she said, so show me. The next morning, Alexander resigned from 3 board seats, donated stock to a female-led foundation, fired 2 senior advisors, including the one who had signed off on her transfer, and he did it all before lunch. That night, he left a note in her mailbox, just 1 line. You were never a dare. You're the reason I'm done playing games. She showed up at the penthouse that night. No questions, no apologies, just 2 mugs of hot cocoa. They sat on the balcony in silence, and when he reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. She laced their fingers together. She leaned in slowly, not for a kiss, but for closeness. And when their foreheads touched, he whispered, You're the first thing I ever chose for no reason but love. She didn't say it back. Not yet. But the way she rested her head on his shoulder was enough, because some truths didn't need words. They just needed time. The first time she let herself fall asleep in his bed, she expected to wake up alone. Instead, she woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of the shower running. Alexander wasn't gone. He was in the next room, humming lowly, as if unburdened. She stretched slowly, her body sore in quiet, beautiful ways. Her dress was folded neatly on the armchair. Her journal sat untouched on the nightstand. He hadn't tried to peek. He never did. When he stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his neck, hair damp, he looked at her like she was the beginning of something he never thought he'd get to have. You stayed, he said softly. You didn't make me feel like I had to leave. He walked to her, kissed her forehead, and said, Today might get messy. She raised an eyebrow. More boardroom drama? More like fallout, he said, handing her a tablet. The screen showed an article. The headline was sharp, mean, and designed to provoke. Billionaire CEO's secret nights with farm girl janitor more than just a dare. Her heart dropped. Below the headline was a photo, blurry, grainy, but unmistakable, the 2 of them stepping into the penthouse late at night. He wasn't touching her, but the suggestion was loud enough. Who leaked this? She asked. I don't know yet, but it doesn't matter. Yes, it does, she said, standing, her voice rising. People will think I'm here because I slept with you. Let them think, he said, quiet but firm. What they think doesn't change who you are. No, she said, eyes narrowing, but it might change what you do about me. He reached for her, but she stepped back. I need to think, she said, alone. She left before he could stop her. The elevator ride down felt longer than it ever had. That afternoon, the whispers spread. In the break room, in the elevators, in the hallways that once ignored her. Some stared, some smirked. A few looked at her with thinly veiled pity. She didn't cry, not even when someone posted a screenshot of the article on the custodial crew's group chat with the comment, "So that's how you clean penthouses." That night she didn't go back. Alexander didn't text, didn't call. He knew her well enough now to give her space, but she could feel him, the ache of distance, and she hated that it mattered so much. The next morning, she handed in her badge. The HR woman didn't look surprised. She just nodded and said, "Please clear your locker by noon." Ellie walked out of Hartwell Tower with a cardboard box and her head high. She took a bus home. Her hands shook the entire ride. Meanwhile, Alexander stood in front of the press for the first time in 2 years. "I am not here to entertain gossip," he said into the microphones, "but I will say this. The woman you're asking about didn't seduce anyone. I'm the one who pursued her. And yes, it started as a dare, one I deeply regret. But what followed wasn't a game. It was the most honest thing I've known." Someone shouted a question. Was she aware of the dare when it began? No, he said, and if she never forgives me for that, I'll still spend the rest of my life trying to be the man she thought I was when she first looked at me. His statement went viral. Some mocked, some defended, some asked who she was, where she came from, but none of them really knew her. None of them had seen the way her hands folded laundry like prayer, the way her eyes held too much and still stayed soft. That night, Ellie sat on her front porch, watching the wind bend through the cornfields. Her younger brother Sam sat beside her, quiet. "Is it true?" he asked finally. "Did he bet on you?" "He did," she said, "but that's not why I stayed." Sam looked down. "Then why?" "Because he stopped pretending," she whispered, "and because I wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted without shame." Sam didn't answer, but he reached over, took her hand, and held it like he did with May. "Wait saung siriang chi hari ihaun tilay chi." The next morning there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Alexander standing on the porch, no suit, no driver, no entourage, just him holding a small black notebook. "I believe this is yours," he said, handing her the journal. "You left it." She took it silently. "And I came to tell you I let it break me. The article, the fallout, the look on your face when you realized what I'd risked by not protecting you sooner." She stepped aside. He didn't walk in, just stood in the doorway. "You were right," he said. "I didn't stop it. I didn't act fast enough. I didn't deserve the way you trusted me, but I want to learn how to." She looked at him. He looked tired, honest, for the first time not in control. "I lost my job," she said. "I know, and I'm so sorry." "I'm not," she said. "It reminded me who I was before you, and who I want to be beside you, not behind you." He smiled, small and grateful. "Then help me build something. Not just a life, a place, a new foundation, for people like you, like us." "What do you mean?" "A rural leadership program, scholarships, apprenticeships, real tools for real people. You'd run it, you'd shape it, I'd just fund it." She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "One condition. Anything. No secrets, no saving me, just walking beside me." "Deal," he said. She stepped forward, touched his chest and whispered, "You said I undid you, but maybe you needed to come undone." "I did," he said, "and you're the only person I want to put me back together." They kissed on the porch, quiet, soft, nothing showy, not a grand gesture, just truth. The farm dog barked once, the wind rustled the trees, and somewhere beyond the fields, the world turned slower for a moment. Because sometimes the girl who comes from nowhere becomes the center of everything. And sometimes a man who had everything learns that the one thing worth keeping can't be bought, only earned. For the first time in weeks, the sun felt warm instead of exposing. Ellie stood on the back porch of her family's farmhouse, sipping weak coffee and staring across the acres of land that had once felt like the edge of her world. Now it felt like the center. After that morning with Alexander on the porch, things hadn't snapped back to perfect. There were no dramatic makeups or viral declarations of love. Instead, he left without another word, giving her space, truly this time, and she needed it, because forgiveness wasn't something you gave like a wrapped gift. It was something that unfolded slowly, layer by layer, until the anger stopped feeling necessary. He had bet on her innocence. He had underestimated her worth, but somewhere in the aftermath, he had also chosen truth. She saw it in the way he showed up quietly, no headlines, no cameras, just him. But even now, days later, she didn't know if she was ready to let the world back in, especially his world. That afternoon, she walked the property line, her boots sinking slightly into the thawing soil. Sam was at school. The house was quiet. Her heart was not. In her pocket was a business card. Not his, but one from the foundation he mentioned, Rural Futures. It didn't exist yet, but the title was clear. Ellie Parker, Program Director. She hadn't said yes. She hadn't said no. She just carried it with her like a maybe she wasn't ready to unpack. That evening she opened her old journal. The pages were filled with unfinished thoughts, some angry, some hopeful, all real. On the last page, in handwriting that wasn't hers, were 6 words. I will never bet on you again. Her breath caught. She didn't cry. She just closed the journal and sat very still. In Manhattan, Alexander stood in a boardroom that once felt like his kingdom. Now it felt smaller, quieter. He had handed off day-to-day operations of the company to his CFO. Investors were nervous. Blake was livid. But Alexander didn't flinch, because for once he wasn't chasing returns. He was chasing redemption. The foundation paperwork had been submitted. The first donors were lined up. He had chosen a property in upstate New York for the headquarters, a converted barn with history, charm, and no signal. It wasn't a move people understood, but Ellie would. At least, he hoped she would. The next week, he didn't visit. He didn't call. He just sent her an email with one sentence. The keys are yours if you want them. She didn't reply. Not right away. She walked to the old post office in town, picked up a package he had sent. Inside was a leather-bound folder and a hand-drawn blueprint of the barn conversion. The center of the page had her name, in neat, confident print, under the title, Executive. That night, Ellie lay awake staring at the ceiling. She thought about what it meant to rebuild, not a building, but a belief in someone. She didn't love the way he had met her, but she couldn't deny that the man he became after her mattered more than the mistake. She thought about the girls who lived in towns like hers, who believed they had to shrink to survive, who believed their innocence made them weak, and then she thought about his voice when he told her, "You were never weak. You were unshakable." The next morning she packed a bag, 2 flannel shirts, a notebook, a photo of her and Sam as kids. She left a note for her brother, told him she'd be back in 3 days. When she arrived at the barn, the door was unlocked. Dust floated in warm beams of light. She walked slowly, ran her hand along the edge of the rough wooden table in the center. He wasn't there, just the quiet thrum of a building waiting to be filled. She found a toolbox in the corner, hammered in the first nail herself, hung the blueprint on the wall, pinned her own note beneath it, her first step as program director, listen more than you speak. Outside, a black SUV pulled up. She didn't hear it, but when she turned, Alexander was standing in the doorway. He looked tired, windblown, almost nervous. "Didn't expect you," he said. "Didn't decide until this morning." "Is it a yes?" he asked. "It's not a no," she replied. "Good," he said, "because I've been building this in my head for weeks, but I didn't want to build it without you." She turned to face him fully. "Do you mean the foundation or the rest of it?" "Both," he said, "especially the rest." He stepped closer. "You made me realize something I was too arrogant to admit before. I didn't fall for the version of you I imagined. I fell for the version that terrified me, the one who said no when I expected yes, the one who didn't need saving but saved me anyway." She didn't speak. She just looked at him. Then slowly, she held out the journal. "If you ever lie to me again, you'll never see this again." He smiled, a little crooked. "Deal." She reached out, took his hand and said, "Then help me start this. Let's build something that doesn't require pretending." "Only if you promise one thing," he said. "What?" "That you'll keep undoing me, a little at a time, until I forget who I was without you." She laughed, quiet and genuine. "You're so dramatic. You bring it out of me." "Fine," she said, "but you're scrubbing the toilets the first month." "Done," he replied. "You think I'm joking?" "I hope you're not." That night, they didn't sleep in the barn, but they stayed there late, sitting on the floor, sharing stories, making plans, sketching futures. When he finally leaned in to kiss her, it wasn't a dare. It was a decision. She let him, not because he had changed, but because he had chosen to. And in that space between silence and intention, something real began. Not a fairy tale, but a foundation, because the girl who once mopped marble floors now laid blueprints on old barn walls, and the man who once bet on taking something was learning how to build something that couldn't be bought. Trust, respect, and something dangerously close to love. The wind that passed through the hills didn't bite anymore. It carried the scent of cut grass, distant pine, and something else, hope. Ellie stood at the top of the ridge behind the barn, overlooking the plot of land they'd cleared for the youth retreat cabins. Just a few wooden frames for now, but each one a promise. Behind her, laughter spilled from the barn doors where three girls fresh from a long drive from another dusty corner of America were painting handmade signs that read words like strength and voice. Alexander was inside too, sleeves rolled up, arguing with the contractor about window height like it was the most important thing in the world. And maybe today it was, because this wasn't a company, it wasn't a business deal. It was hers, the first thing she'd ever built that didn't belong to someone else. She felt him before she saw him, the steady footsteps on gravel, the way her heart stilled not with nerves, but with grounding. He came up beside her quietly, holding out a thermos. "Not coffee," he said. "I finally learned your tea order." She took it, unscrewed the lid, and sipped. It was exactly right. "I didn't ask you to change," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "That's why I did." She looked at him then, not the billionaire, not the bet maker, but the man who had learned that power meant nothing if you couldn't look someone in the eye and ask to stay. "You remember that first night?" she asked. "The dare?" He winced. "I do, more than I want to." "It doesn't hurt anymore," she said, "but it's never going to be pretty." "I know. Still," she added, "I'm glad it happened, because if you had met me any other way, I'm not sure you would have looked twice." "You're wrong," he said. "If I had passed you on a dirt road with paint on your hands and purpose in your step, I would have stopped the car." She smiled, small and soft. "Even if I smelled like goats?" "Especially then." They stood in silence for a while. Below them, the girls were putting the final touches on the new sign. Ellie read the words aloud. "This is where stories begin." She turned to Alexander. "You think that's true?" "I think ours just did," he said. "Not with a bet, not with a kiss, but with the first time you looked at me like I was a man and not a challenge." She nodded. "And you looked at me like I was more than the version you wanted to win." "I don't want to win anymore," he said. "I want to walk beside someone who makes me forget what I used to chase." She reached for his hand, not dramatic, not trembling, just steady. "Then keep walking, but know this place, this work, my voice. It's not yours to hold, you get to share it, not shape it." "Understood. No more games. None left to play." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the land. In a city somewhere far behind them, contracts still buzzed, elevators still rose, and power still changed hands. But here, the rules were different, and sometimes the most unexpected stories begin not with the perfect moment, but with the broken one. The one that forces you to unlearn everything you thought you knew about desire, control, and who deserves to be seen. Ellie Parker was never the prize in someone's dare. She was the lesson. And Alexander Grayson, the man who had once tried to take something in a single night, would spend every night after trying to deserve what she gave him freely. Not her innocence, her truth, her time, her hand, and maybe, eventually, her heart. But only because he finally learned how to ask for it the right way,